Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are watching this from live around the world. Thank you for joining us on this special live broadcast on Hunger Action Month. We have a lot to talk about today, and I believe you play a very important role in helping to address food insecurity around the world in your communities. So, as you are watching this live broadcast, or perhaps it's the podcast, I want you to prepare yourselves to make comments, to let us know what you're thinking, and hopefully you can position yourself to be able to help us address this very important need in our communities. The purpose of today's roundtable is to bring awareness to the impact of hunger and food insecurities around our communities, and to also provide steps to assist where necessary. I am privileged to be on this platform with such gifted and talented individuals. And our host today is no stranger to many of us. Her name is Attorney Mila Risen, and she's partner at K&L Gates Law Firm. Ladies and gentlemen, I am glad that you've joined us. Perhaps you're at work, wherever you are. Please help me welcome Attorney Mila Risen. Take it from here, Mila.
Great. Thank you so much. And so excited to be here with everyone today. Good morning. And this is such an important topic, and so glad we're taking the time to cover it today. And like you said, the people on the panel today are just wonderful on this topic, and really looking forward to getting started. Before we do, I just wanted to spend a second as to why this topic of hunger and food insecurity is important to me. I am on the board of Dare to Care, which is a community-based 501c3 in Lauderhill, Florida, close to here. And they have been doing great work for over 16 years in South Florida. Targeted initiatives are in place, and one of those targeted initiatives is food insecurity. So it's allowed me to really get to know a really important area through this organization. We're going to spend some more time talking about Dare to Care today, but I thought I would start with that overview. And let's do some introductions of the speakers before we get going here. We could spend all day on their bios. Each one of them are just beyond talented and beyond knowledgeable in this area, but let's go one by one if we can. First, with the introduction of Bishop Henry Fernandez. He is one of the most anointed people that you could know, and he has a list of accolades, whether he's an entrepreneur, motivational speaker, he has written plays, a best-selling author, also the senior pastor at the Faith Center, which has celebrated 30 years, and as part of that has been serving this community in South Florida, and has been part of Dare to Care since its inception. So very, very knowledgeable on the topic of hunger and food insecurity we're talking about today. And so glad that he's part of this, and just going to be a great part of the panel. Also, we have Commissioner Nikki Fried. Most of you know her as well. And she is the Commissioner for Agriculture and Consumer Services since 2019. And since she took office, one of her top priorities has been food insecurity and food access. She's taken a significant amount of initiatives in this area, and it had a huge impact. Some people don't know the wide range that she's accomplished in this area, but whether it's with children, whether it's in the rural communities, whether it's with seniors, food banks, farms, it's just a wide range, and I can't wait to hear about it today. It's going to be a great conversation. Also, she's secured recently $93 million in federal funding from the USDA to support the school nutrition program to feed over 3 million children in the schools. So can't wait to hear from her on the topics. And then also we have Pastor Deborah Hill, again, someone who's no stranger to this group and who we can't wait to hear from as well. She is actually the chairperson of Dare to Care. And in terms of her professional career, she is the former director of nursing for the Florida Department of Health and served in that role for 35 years before she retired. So in both capacities, she's able to speak to the topic today. So really want to just welcome everyone that we have, all of our speakers today. And then moving over to just a very brief overview before we get speaking about the topics in a panel is that to just talk about Hunger Action Month and what this means and why this is important, and then also some statistics to touch on. First, Hunger Action Month has been in place a long time around the country, but interestingly, about a year ago, it was Commissioner Freed who did a proclamation for the state of Florida to declare September as Hunger Action Month, which was great. It was as a result of over 3 million Floridians having the shortage of chronic hunger. And so it's a significant initiative, a significant proclamation a year ago. And it really allowed the awareness of hunger in the United States and locally. So I think one of the things to start and take a pause is before we start talking locally, at the intro, we talked about what does this mean to everyone globally, and spend 1 second on the global impact of hunger. I don't want to spend long on it, but there was a recent report that came out from the state of food that talks about food security and nutrition in the world. And it was 2021. It was UNICEF, World Health Organization, top organizations, and they talked about how between the past year in terms of 2020, that between 720 million and 811 million people in the world faced hunger. A real significant set of numbers also in this report talk about the impact of the pandemic in 2020 on children. And that's what we're going to talk about today too, is what are the impact on children in other key areas. And we're concerned, it specifically says in the report, about children under age of 5 and how they're affected by stunting, 150 million stunting, 45 million in wasting, and 38 million in overweight. So it really goes into some really staggering sets of numbers. It was throughout the entire world, but with a particular focus in Africa and Asia. What does the United States look like? It's no stranger to the United States, this issue as well. Over 38 million people are impacted in 2020. Florida, we're going to hear about today as well. In 2020, 1 in 4 children in Florida are estimated to be food insecure. And then when we take it down to Broward County, the numbers are just as staggering, which is that 18.9% of children in South Florida are food insecure, which is over 236,000 children go to bed hungry every night. So that's some data that I think is important to really think about. I think it sets a good stage as to why a year ago there was Hunger Action Month put in place by the commissioner, because I think that those numbers are staggering, and it's such a worthwhile topic for us to be covering today. So I don't know if anyone has any remarks before we get going, or would we like to start getting into the questions and answers?
Questions.
Okay. So for the first question, what does Hunger Action Month mean to you? And let's start hearing from the panelists as to what does this mean to each one of you when you hear of Hunger Action Month?
Well, I'll get started. And before we do get started, I do want to talk through what you just discussed, that we did a proclamation a year ago. And I have another proclamation here with us today because this is something that impacts everybody across the board. Whether you directly are impacted by being food insecure, or you work with somebody who's food insecure and you don't even know it. There's so many people in our communities that are impacted by this issue. And it's so important that we bring awareness to the situation. And so this is an important month for me because this is something that I've been working on, quite honestly, my entire life. When I was in high school, I was doing soup kitchens down in downtown Miami. And I saw just how the basic need for food that not everybody had access to or the financial means to do so. And as I became commissioner, I saw this firsthand. When we've got 3.5 million Floridians across our state that are food insecure, and over 1 million of those are our children. So this is something that has been a mission of mine as commissioner. This is a personal issue to me because I know that when our kids can't eat in school and don't eat in school, they can't be successful in school and they end up dropping out or not having the same economic opportunities that their peers and colleagues do. And same thing with their parents and adults. When they don't have access to nutritional food, they can't be successful in the workforce. And then they are constantly having other healthcare issues and other concerns and not being able to be productive necessarily in society. So this is something that is on all of us to continue to heighten awareness, continue to bring conversations of how we can resolve these issues. This is Florida in 2021. And this is United States in 2021. And unfortunately, so many of our cities and our counties are struggling with food insecurity. And we've got to continue to bring heightened awareness so we can bring the necessary resources and community involvement to help resolve this. So I do have a proclamation that I just want to read a little bit. Whereas the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services is committed to increasing access to nutrition for all Floridians through the administration of our school lunch program, summer food service program, seamless summer option, commodity supplemental food program, the emergency food assistance program, and support of Florida's food banks and nutrition programs and partners. And whereas Dare to Care, a Lauderhill-based community development organization, is a vital part of feeding Floridians in need, serves hundreds of Broward County families each week and 3,000 families during Thanksgiving, and helps further FDEC's effort to reduce hunger and improve the health and well-being of all Florida residents. Now, therefore, I, Nicole Freed, Commissioner of Agriculture for the state of Florida, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2021 as National Hunger Month in the state of Florida. Encourage all Florida residents to join the fight against chronic hunger by volunteering, donating, and raising awareness for organizations dedicated to improving access to the state of Florida. So for all those who were involved with this fight, thank you for what you are doing. Thank you for continuing to raise awareness. And this is something that we as a community and as a state must come together to resolve together. So thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for Commissioner Freed for that awesome proclamation on behalf of Dare to Care and the recognition for this month and bringing it to the forefront. Thank you on behalf of Dare to Care. We appreciate what you do, all that you do, and it just motivates us to do even more. So I just appreciate and want to say thank you on behalf of Dare to Care.
Yes, yes. And I totally agree with that. Thank you so much. Very kind of you. If you don't mind, I'll go ahead of Pastor Deborah to answer your question, Attorney Milo. Three things comes to my mind when we're talking about Hunger Action Month. Number one, I think it is a time to make us be aware of others who are being affected by this. As Commissioner Nikki and yourself gave some stats on the real crisis that's in and around our community, and especially in schools. Who would think America, the land of prosperity, if you will, would be struggling with so many issues, when it comes to food insecurity. So I think one, it gives us this month, and hopefully those who are watching right now, will have a heart, will recognize that, just because you every day know where you're going to go for breakfast, what you're going to have for lunch and dinner, and we have the snacks in between, just because that's normal for you, it's natural for you. There are millions of people. In fact, based on the stats, almost 1 billion people on the planet who will go to bed tonight hungry. That alone should touch anybody to if you have a heart, I think, for people. Number two, I think it also helps us this month to find ways to address the need. It's one thing to identify that there's a need, but is there a plan?
Mhm.
What can we do to make a difference
Mhm.
in making people be able to say, I know where my next meal is coming from. And finally, number three, to collaborate with other organizations and people. I mean, right on this platform, many of you are watching around the world, and in particular, maybe in our own communities here, you're seeing four groups of people, or four different people, I should say, in this one group, in this one platform, who have come together to make a difference. I think we can accomplish so much more when we are
Mhm.
united. And I
Mhm.
hope that this month will give all of us, whether you're a pastor watching yourself, a community, elected official, maybe you're a business owner, or just a citizen of your city, every one of us, if we come together, we can truly make a difference in this area. So that's my input on the question.
Thank you. Amazing comments. Amazing comments. Pastor Deborah, do you have some thoughts on this?
Just to add a few thoughts, it means so much to highlight the level of food insecurity in our community, in our state, and our nation. I think it gives us the opportunity to shine a light. Part of the mission statement for Dare to Care is to meet the most pressing needs of individuals and families. If food insecurity is not a pressing need, then I don't know what is. It is a major issue. People tend not to think about it, just as the other panelists have said already. But if you're going to bed and you're not sure how you're going to feed your family the next day, you're not sleeping well, you're not performing well, your overall attitude isn't good, how can you think well, especially if you're a parent and you don't know how your children are going to be fed the next day? How are you going to prepare a meal for them? So I think this is wonderful, this podcast, where we're able to actually shine a light and encourage people to take action to address this issue of food insecurity.
Okay, great. So I think one of the things to also talk about, and it sounds like everyone's touched on this in the opening, is what can we actually do? That we've heard about the statistics, we've heard about the need for the awareness, but it would be great for all of us to now spend a couple minutes talking about what can we do and what are we doing to bring awareness and change to the current situation.
Well, I'll start. I can start with that one. The good news is each of us can help bring awareness to this situation. We all have a role. Um, and just with Dare to Care, the amount of people we serve every week, we serve approximately 1,000 individuals every single week. And you can volunteer, you can send donations in, you can talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. Sometimes we see people, they look well, we see them on the outside, we think they're doing okay, but some of these very same people may not know where their next meal is coming from. And I think it's up to us to share information. Dare to Care has been around for 16 years. And I remember we had a caretaker coming to help out with my mom before she passed. And I happened to mention to her, I said, by the way, do you know about Dare to Care? Do you know we give food every single Saturday to people who have need? And she was like, I didn't know that. And she didn't have a need herself, but she had two elderly neighbors
Mm.
who, because of the pandemic, were no longer able to take public transportation. They weren't driving. So she would get food for those two elderly neighbors, and she would take food to them. And they were so, so appreciative. And she was like, oh my goodness, please, please let everybody know how appreciative they are that they don't have to worry about where the meal is coming from. So there are a lot of things we can do, but when we talk about the Hunger Action Month, we have to take action. We have to do something.
And I can jump in here too, because there are so many fantastic organizations across the entire state and across the country that are doing so many great works like Dare to Care, No Kid Hungry, and there's so many opportunities for people in the communities to get involved. But what I've also seen across our state is coming up with new initiatives, new ideas of how to feed our communities. Whether that is, trying to start a urban garden in your community, and especially areas that may be food deserts. And so you're teaching the community how to garden and find some pride in their community, and teach people, and especially our kids, what a nutritional value a tomato is, and how to grow a tomato. And so now you're empowering people too. We're seeing it also in some creative activities out across our state too, with agriculture, working together with different businesses to create almost pop-up gardens, and pop-up locations where you're going to provide food for some, again, food desert areas. So there's all these great organizations, but there's also ways for even a community to come together and think outside the box. In Orlando, we have a fantastic organization that actually takes an old school bus and puts it with fresh fruits and vegetables and goes right into the community to give out some of that fresh produce. I've called on universal breakfast inside of our classrooms, inside of our schools, because we know that so many of our kids still don't have access to food, of course, for breakfast. And there's a stigma attached to going into the cafeteria to get breakfast. So I've said, why don't we just give free breakfast to all of our kids? And even those programs that are free and reduced, just make it free. The amount of money that we spend on the reduced is pennies on the dollars across the country. And so giving everybody an opportunity to have this nutritional food, and unfortunately, and not to bring politics into this at all, but we're sitting on $840 million that right now should be brought down from the federal government that are supposed to be going to emergency EBT, BT, and SNAP benefits to our children. And so we, as a government, also have to recognize that we have a role to play here. And that's making sure that we've got the resources, that we're thinking outside the box, and we're empowering our local communities and giving them the resources to be successful, because this really is all hands on deck because of the implications and just human decency. I mean, to know that I know where my next meal comes from, but I don't know about my neighbors 3 doors down, and to know that we live in a community, and we're supposed to. I mean, I've got two religious leaders here on this line. I know some of the foundations of our religions is love thy neighbors, and that is part of who we are as a society, and we're supposed to care for one another in good times and in bad times, and we got to be doing that now when it comes to food insecurity and the hunger across our country.
Okay. For a moment hearing Commissioner Nikki speak, for a moment, I thought maybe she's in the wrong business. She probably should be a clergy herself, you know, because she's right on it. You are right on it. Of course, you spoke about the part that politics and our government needs to play in this situation. Of course, funding is there, but as you know, there's just a whole lot of issues to get through that. But I can speak on the behalf of the clergy, the Christian community, or just say the religious community. There's a lot that we can do because, as Commissioner Nikki said, that the foundation of our faith, it's about loving our neighbor.
Mhm.
I would ask those of you who are watching today, if you're a person of faith, and when you hear about food insecurity, if that doesn't touch you, you may want to reevaluate your faith, the core of your faith, because, you know, in my faith, I believe in Jesus Christ. He actually, had a conversation with his disciples about the same issue, and they were saying, when did we not feed you? you know and his response to them was, when you fail to do it to the least of these,
Mhm.
the ordinary people you see every day, the people you tend to ignore every day, you are failing to do it unto him. So I would ask those of you who are people of faith, if you're a clergy, make that awareness in your church on the platform. Find a way starting this month, and not just September alone, find a way to bring awareness to the crisis that's in your city. It's there. Maybe you've got a wonderful temple, build-in facility. Your people are doing great and wonderful. But I will guarantee you, across the street, somewhere down the street in your community, there are people who cannot or don't know, better yet, where the next meal is coming from. So use your platform, use your influence, because you do have it as a leader, to go and talk more to your congregation or to your followers about this issue. And then if you are a laity, parishioner, whatever, you can play a role, like find the food banks in your area. Maybe your ministry has it. Maybe it's a community thing. For us here in South Florida, we have Dare to Care. Volunteer at least once a month. Give of your time, to bag the food items, in the bags, and distribute it to the people. Perhaps maybe the next time you go to the grocery store, you're picking up a can of beans or something here, maybe take two, and then, bring to your church and say to your pastor, your rabbi, whomever, here's some grocery, find a family to give it to, or drop it off at a food bank center or something like that. If the heart is there, you'll find the will to get it done. And I think those are some of the things that we can do to bring awareness to it.
I think all of those cumulatively are excellent. I think one of the questions is also to just think about the pandemic and really how has this really impacted the scarcity of food? We hear the statistics, but can each one of you just provide some quick insight into how we think that the pandemic has affected the scarcity of food in the communities?
I think the pandemic shined a light on so many inequities. So many. We all know that. We've all lived through it. We've heard the news and how families are impacted, especially the pandemic itself. People of color are still dying at a higher rate for whatever reason, afraid of the vaccine or just not having to be in places where they have that level of exposure. But the pandemic, for people who lost their jobs, or for whatever reason were not able to work from home, they were greatly impacted. So, and they're still being impacted today, to tell you the truth. They just may not, it be evident to everybody. But I think two groups in particular, your most vulnerable groups, if I could say that word, your elderly and your children, I think were greatly impacted by the pandemic. As I said earlier, I think the elderly wanted to and had to stay home, okay, because being out caused them to be exposed potentially to the virus. So if you're an elderly individual and you already have limited resources, you're living based maybe a Social Security check, income that's very, very limited, and you depend on maybe Dare to Care, going to Dare to Care once a week to pick up your groceries. Or maybe you're depending on somebody to take you to the grocery store, and you no longer have that. And you are sitting home hungry, not really knowing where your next meal is going to come from. And then, of course, the impact on families. I mean, I had 3 sons growing up. And I tell you, there were times I would go to the grocery store, I would want to cry when I had to try to feed those 3 boys when they were in their teen years. And I just don't know how families are doing it today when they're barely making minimum wage. How in the world are they doing it? And then with the pandemic, how even more were they able to do it or less able to do it once we went into this whole shutdown mode? And now they're just trying to recover. So yes, I think we do have a huge issue. And I think the pandemic just made it even worse. And it's like Bishop was saying, as Christians, as religious individuals who have the same belief to care about your neighbor, How can we not think about these people who've had to live through this pandemic and just struggling each and every day, not really
Right.
knowing, where their meal is coming from? And yeah, I think it's had a huge impact.
And I can jump in here too. Just knowing, we help to administer all of the summer break spots. So when we and help to administer a lot of the food banks across the state, and we saw firsthand that impact. Not only did my team, when we knew that schools were closing down, have to jump into immediate action. We worked around the clock for that weekend going into the closure of schools to make sure that no kid was going to go hungry during the closures. And every county was a little bit different of how to make sure that how to get the food to the children, whether it was picking it up at different locations across the county, whether it was one pickup spot, it was only 3 days a week or 2 days a week. And so watching our schools and watching our communities come together to make sure that our kids were eating. But we're even going through that right now where our schools are open. We know that there are thousands of kids that are quarantined across the entire state. And there is no mechanism of how to make sure that those kids are being fed today. Because there's no summer break spots locations open because our schools are open. And it's a logistical nightmare to figure out how to make sure that those kids are being fed. So our office is working around the clock trying to find solutions to that. But this just kind of continues to magnify what is happening every single day with our families. And Pastor, I think you are absolutely right that there is a time during this pandemic at the very beginning when we were completely shut down, where I was like, what is happening to our seniors who may not have smartphones and may not have all of our apps that we can just order Instacart and get our foods delivered to us. I mean, our seniors don't have access to that. And if our typical caregivers are not providing those
Mhm.
resources and they don't have access to the same people who are typically taking them to go food shopping, what was happening to our seniors. And I think that this again continued to heighten the awareness of what is happening. And I volunteered a lot at our food banks in the last year and a half and saw every community coming together, but seeing those lines get longer and
Mm.
longer every single time. And the people that are coming to those locations saying to me, this is the first time I've ever been here.
Hmm.
Thank you. And to
Hmm.
know that there are so many people for the first time had to ask for a little bit of help, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. There's so many people across our country that were struggling and we struggle together. And so there's never feel bad about asking for help and for assistance as long as you're willing to give it back when you are in a capacity to do
Hmm.
so. And that's always, I come from the Jewish faith, and we are taught to kun olam, to heal the world. And that is who we are as people too, is to always be able to give back. But I do think the pandemic unfortunately worsened the situation. But also, I consider this almost a silver lining that we're having conversations like this. And these are not the
Right.
first time these conversations are happening this month or the last year. The more and more people across our country are recognizing the food insecurity that has happens across our country, and more people are finding in their hearts to want to help and to be supportive of their communities.
Commissioner Freed, you bring up a good point when you talk about the shame, because I do think that, like you're saying, it's the first time that people have had to access a food bank, and there is a
Right.
lot of shame to that. You say, I'm working,
Mhm.
I've never had to get a handout,
Mhm.
and people should not feel that way. If you have a need,
Mhm.
and we're able to provide that need through whatever means, whether it's the Dare to Care Food Bank or some other food bank, don't be ashamed. Take advantage of it.
Mhm.
Because at any point in time, any one of us could be in that situation, you know? So I
Right.
think that was a good point that you made out, and I just wanted to add a little bit to it. That's all.
Wonderful.
Bishop, do you have any thoughts about the pandemic and what you've seen on your end? I'm sure you've seen a lot, and a lot that a lot of us don't see on the outside.
I think both of the speakers, brought it all out on the table. Definitely, we've seen longer lines. The need is there. I was volunteering at our Dare to Care Center. I believe it was last year during the week before Thanksgiving, or the week of Thanksgiving, I should say. And what struck me was the fact that last year was so different from previous years because I've watched people with certain cars, certain professions. I mean, I even saw a police officer, a police in uniform, come. Now, maybe it's for someone, whatever, but I think we need to get to the place where we normalize the fact that it's okay to be in need, because we're all people who are in need. It may not be food, it may be in need of love, in need of something. And one of the things that I have identified during the crisis, the pandemic, is that there's a lot of people who are putting their pride away and say, look, if help is there, I'm going to go and take advantage of it. And for the rest of us, we can also make it easy for others who may feel ashamed, you know, to know it's okay to go get, you know, bags of groceries or whatever food you can get. You know, another thing people can do, and I've seen this in during the pandemic. I know of people who have done this, is apart from even giving to the food bank centers and so forth, they will take it upon their own and drop off groceries, you know, go and shop for family members and friends or the seniors and drop groceries off. We all can play a role because the evidence is there that the pandemic has definitely increased the need. Yes.
And I just
Okay,
want to
great.
add,
Yeah.
I just
Oh,
want
go
to add
ahead. I'm
one
sorry.
thing too. I advised you when people were receiving those the first stimulus checks last year. I was on some Zooms in some communities that said, I really don't need it. Can I give it back to the government? And there was no mechanism to give it back. And I said, why don't you do this? Why don't
Mm.
you deposit the check, cash the check, and either go buy, I think it was $1,500 was those stimulus checks, go either buy $1,500 worth of groceries for your local food banks or go donate it to a local food bank. Those were kind of my advice to those people who said, I want to give my money back to the government. And I said, well, there's no mechanism to do that. But why don't you go use it for something good? And there's a lot of people in your community that may need help. So again, coming up with some creative ways to be able to give back in times like this is what brings communities together.
I think that's exactly right. So I think our last question, and we've touched on it for a while, and I can't believe all the great thoughts we've had today. But if you're speaking to the audience, and this is your last thing you want to say to them about what they can make a difference, and your closing remarks, what would you say to them? I mean, because we've had so many amazing points today, but what would your final conclusion thoughts to this audience be?
I will end it this way. I've noticed that there is LaCastra Horton made a comment. She says people are not able to go and get food due to the corona virus. I will say to her and to others, the need is great. We understand that we're in the midst of a pandemic, but help is also available. And there are several ways you can, position yourself to receive the help. So, for example, the virus is there, but if someone is unable to go, maybe because they're a senior, to a food bank or somewhere where groceries has been handed out, I just urge the community, um, you be the individuals who will go and get the food for these people. So, La Cassandra, I think is the name, Horton. If you're in this local area, please reach out to Dare to Care. I'll ask Pastor Deborah to give the information of where they can. If you call us, we'll have somebody drop it off. And wherever you are watching from, maybe you just need to ask yourself the question. I think that's my challenge and my charge to you. What are you going to do to make a difference? Okay, you've heard
Mhm.
us all talk today
Mhm.
about what can be done, what we have done. We've brought awareness to the issue. Some of you probably never heard of this September food, awareness month and so forth. Now you know. The question is, what are you going to do
Mhm.
with the information, the
Mhm.
knowledge that you now know? Because you see, sitting on the knowledge and refusing to do something about it I think it's a crime, especially if you're a person of faith. I think we all can play our role. We can't fix everybody's problems. We can't fix the world's problems, but we can fix the problems that we are assigned to. And I believe, speaking of myself, I'm assigned to my community. I'm assigned to people that are within my reach. I'm going to do my part. Will you do your part so that God can be pleased with all of us, that we took care of the least of these?
Bishop, that is great. And I think I'd just like to tag on what you're saying. And I was going to say it. What would we ask? Volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. Donate,
Yeah.
donate, donate.
Mhm.
We have our Thanksgiving drive coming up, and last year we served about 2,500 individuals. This year we'd like to make it 3,000. And everybody can do something. Even if you don't
Yeah.
have much, you can give. It takes $30 to feed a family, by the way. And the other thing I wanted to say, yes, the coronavirus is here. We have made it safe for everybody. It's drive-through. There is no contact with any of the volunteers. So if you drive through, open your trunk, we put the food in, and you're good to go. So, if you know somebody who needs access, give them a ride. If you yourself need access, call and see if, you can get it delivered, or ride along with somebody, a friend or a neighbor that you're comfortable with being in the car. So there are things we can do. And of course, we appreciate all the commissioners doing with the food and distribution. We appreciate that. All of our partners and sponsors. We have so many sponsors and so many partners who help provide this food so that we're able to serve the community. So $30 to feed one family. If you can donate, donate. If you can volunteer, bring your kids, volunteer, help them. They'll be able to actually see that you're giving back to the community. I don't know if they're going to put the Dare to Care site on the screen, or if you want me to give it at the end, Bishop. I'm not sure. Or
Go
Myla,
ahead and
which
give
way?
it now. Yeah, you can go ahead and give it now then. Yeah.
The site is www.dare, dare to care, int.org/DTC 2021. That's www.daretocareint.org/DTC 2021. And if you will go to that site, you can sign up to be a volunteer, you can donate, you can find out more information about Dare to Care. So there's the information, and please help us out.
And I think if you didn't get all of those sites and all of those things, reach out to us. I mean, I'm on the board. Pastor Deborah's on the board. We're happy to talk to you and see what you're interested in, what you're interested in doing. So I think that it's whatever you can do, but I think that we all want to make ourselves available to you as well. And so I think that's something that I want to also encourage as part of this call is that it's donating, and also go on the website and look to see all the initiatives that are out there for Dare to Care, because it is critical that we talked about feeding 3,000 families, which is a huge lift right now. And I think we want to make sure we're able to do it. And so anything that can possibly it can be done is critical to us right now. And so reach out to, whether it's donating or asking us about it, that would be great. But I think also, as Commissioner Freed said too, is there are a lot of organizations to think about. So there's Dare to Care, there's other creative ways, there's just so much to be doing. And I think that if each one of us takes the step to make a difference, we're going to slowly chisel away at this problem. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this call is that how can we empower everyone on this call to continue to make a difference? And so, Commissioner Freed, I know you probably have your great remarks too. I don't know if you want to chime in and let the audience know what you're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of just to summarize what has been said on the call, we've got a lot of Floridians who are right now are struggling to make ends meet. Whether it was because they were already food insecure before the pandemic, or the pandemic accelerated the situation for those families. And so during these times, as we as a community can show compassion, can show that we care for one another and come together. And again, whether it is donating your time, donating your financial resources to some of the already established incredible organizations in your community, or if you're not finding one that is serving a specific need for your own community, start it up, take the initiative. And I cannot agree with the Pastor Moore, take your kids. This is something that we have got to make sure that the next generation also sees it and also sees how they can be helpful. I know that I take my 3 stepsons every time there is a food drive here in Tallahassee. We go to the Second Harvest Food Bank here in the Big Bend, and we volunteer, and we talk through, you remember that great croissant that you had this morning? Well, most families across our state don't have access to that. Let's go and volunteer and show our appreciation, and showing that next generation, one, that you are willing to spend your time and effort, but also teaching them that compassion and that willingness to give back to their communities, and instilling community service at a very young age is so important. And because this is something that is, that weed, it's a silent killer. Because not only are we, people are not having access to food, but a nutritional food. Because of course we know that it's a lot cheaper to go and get a family of 4 over a drive-through at McDonald's, but that's not nutritional food. That is only
Right.
going to increase some of the diabetes and other health concerns, which then will have a drain on our healthcare system and on their own well-being. So it's making sure that we are providing access to affordable nutritional food, or giving out access to nutritional food as well, and doing the food banks, but also the community gardens, and teaching people in the communities how to survive as well. So this really takes a village, is what the end story that you're hearing from everybody on this call. It takes individuals, it takes community organizing, and it takes the people willingness to give of their time and of their heart. We are going to get through this, not only through this pandemic, but we are going to tackle food insecurity, because we do have a heightened awareness across our country. We're seeing it from the Biden administration willingness to send additional dollars down, and those of us inside of government recognizing the need, and making sure that we are providing the resources necessary to help our communities out. So I'm so honored to have been part of this riveting conversation today. I know that it is just 1 hour of our day where so many of our families struggle throughout the day. And so knowing that this is just one conversation, there are conversations that are happening like this all across our country. And just know that you have a partner inside the Department of Agriculture, as well as me as an individual, who will understand the needs across our state, and will continue to fight for the people of our state that right now just may need a little extra assistance.
And I think we also want to thank you for being on here. We know how much you're tackling right now, and I think for you to be part of this with us today, we just appreciate it. And again, we appreciate the proclamation, obviously timely, but to have Dare to Care carved out in there was very much appreciated. And again, appreciate your words and everything that you've shared today. And to the other 2 speakers as well, do not want to leave them out, both Bishop Fernandez and Pastor Hill. It was great for all of us to come together today. Hopefully the audience got a lot from this, and hopefully the audience will feel free to reach out to any of us, and continue to have dialogues and continue to have conversations on such a key topic. And this is just the beginning. These conversations are really just the beginning. This is not a one-time thing. This is the beginning, and this is why this is the whole month. To raise awareness and raise conversations about it. So, but I'm glad we did take the time today, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.